Tom always loved the idea of having a small piece of land by the lake. Ever since he was young, he dreamed of a quiet place where he could escape from the noise and rush of the city. A place where he could breathe fresh air, listen to birds, and watch the sun rise and set over the water. It was his dream of peace. Years passed, and Tom worked hard. He saved every extra penny he could. He took extra jobs and made many small sacrifices. Finally, after many long years, Tom found a small piece of land by a beautiful lake. The place was perfect, quiet, calm, and surrounded by tall trees. He could almost feel the peace he had wanted for so long. Tom bought the land with joy in his heart. The papers were signed, and the land was his. No one else's. He named the place Lakeview because the view of the water was clear and wide. For Tom, it was not just land, it was a dream come true. At first, Tom didn't do much with the land. He visited often, walking the trails and sitting by the shore. He liked to come early in the morning when the lake was calm, and the air was cool. Sometimes he brought a book or a picnic and enjoyed the quiet hours. The lake was like a friend, always there, peaceful and calm. One summer, Tom began to think about building a small cabin on the land. Not a big house, just a simple, wooden cabin. It would be his little home away from the city, a place where he could spend weekends and holidays. He drew simple plans on paper, imagining the warm wooden walls and the cozy fireplace inside. But before he could start, something strange happened. One morning, Tom came to the lake as usual. The sun was just rising, painting the sky with soft orange and pink colors. But near the edge of his land, something caught his eye. There, on the border between his land and the land next to it, he saw a small wooden frame. It looked like the start of a building. Tom's heart stopped for a moment. He walked closer to the spot and saw that it was the beginning of a small cabin. But this cabin was not his, it was new, and someone else had started building it. Tom looked around, confused. He hadn't given anyone permission to build on his land. He wondered if it was on the neighbor's property. He went to the fence, trying to see if the cabin was inside his land or theirs. The fence was old and low, and it was hard to be sure. Tom decided to ask the neighbors. He went to the nearest house and knocked on the door. A woman answered. Her name was Sarah, and she was a member of the local homeowners association, the HOA. "Hello, Sarah," Tom said. "Do you know who is building that cabin near the lake? It looks like it might be on my land." Sarah looked surprised. "Oh, that? It's a new cabin the HOA is building for visitors to use. It's on common land, not on anyone's private property." Tom shook his head. "But this is my land, Sarah. I have papers that say I own this land. I didn't agree to any building here." Sarah smiled politely. "The HOA owns the common area around here. That cabin is part of a community plan. Maybe you need to check the documents again." Tom felt uneasy. The cabin was growing day by day, with workers carrying wood and nails. He felt like his land was being taken away from him little by little. Determined to find the truth, Tom hired a surveyor. The surveyor came with tools and maps and walked around the land carefully. After a few days, he returned with a report. Tom sat down and read it slowly. The surveyor's map showed clearly, the cabin was built on Tom's land. It was not on any common area or HOA land. It was definitely on his property. Tom's heart sank. How could the HOA build on his land without asking him? He felt a mix of anger, sadness, and confusion. This was his dream place, and now it felt like a stranger was taking it away. He tried again to talk to Sarah and other members of the HOA. He showed them the survey report. But they did not seem to care. They said the cabin was necessary for the community and that Tom was making a mistake. Tom felt alone. His neighbors did not support him, and the HOA seemed more powerful. Every time he went to the lake, the cabin was there, growing bigger and stronger. One evening, Tom sat on the shore, watching the sun set behind the trees. The lake was calm, but his heart was restless. He loved this place. It was supposed to be his safe space, his quiet home. But now, everything was changing. The cabin was a reminder that his land was not safe. That others could ignore his rights and build on his dreams. Tom knew he had to decide what to do next. Would he let the cabin stay? Would he fight for his land? The answers were not clear yet. For now, Tom only had one thought: he had to protect his land, the place where his heart truly belonged. Tom could not stop thinking about the cabin. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the small wooden structure standing on his land, growing bigger with each passing day. The place he had dreamed of was slowly being taken over without his permission. It felt wrong. And he knew he had to do something. The next morning, Tom decided to visit the local government office. He wanted to check all the documents about his land and the land next to it. Maybe there was some mistake, or maybe the HOA had special permission. He hoped to find answers. At the office, Tom spoke to a friendly clerk named Mr. Ali. Tom explained his situation carefully. Mr. Ali listened and then pulled out several maps and papers. Together, they looked at the official land records. "It's clear, Tom," Mr. Ali said kindly. "Your land boundaries are marked here, and this cabin is definitely inside your property. If someone built there without your permission, that is a problem." Tom felt a small relief. Now he had proof from the government records. But what could he do? The HOA seemed to ignore him, and now he had to find a way to make them listen. On his way home, Tom stopped by the cabin site. Workers were still there, hammering wood and carrying materials. Tom approached a worker named Ben, who was busy nailing a plank. "Excuse me," Tom said politely. "Can you tell me who is in charge of building this cabin?" Ben wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at Tom. "I work for the HOA. They hired us to build this cabin. It's supposed to be a small retreat for visitors. You know, for everyone in the community." Tom nodded but shook his head inside. "But this is my land. I didn't agree to this. I have papers that say the cabin is on my property." Ben looked uncomfortable but said, "I don't make the decisions, sir. I just follow orders." Tom thanked Ben and left. He felt a mix of sadness and frustration. It was clear the HOA was moving ahead without any care for Tom's rights. That evening, Tom wrote a letter to the HOA board. In the letter, he explained everything clearly. He included copies of the survey and government papers. He asked them politely but firmly to stop building the cabin on his land and to remove what was already built. He mailed the letter and hoped for a quick and peaceful solution. Days passed. Tom waited. But there was no answer. No phone call. No meeting invitation. The cabin continued to grow. Tom felt ignored. It was as if the HOA did not care about his rights or feelings. He started to wonder if the law was really on his side. One afternoon, Tom met his friend Lisa, who lived in the nearby town. Lisa was a teacher and a kind person. Tom told her about the cabin and the problem with the HOA. Lisa listened carefully. "Tom, you have to stand up for yourself. It's your land, and no one has the right to build on it without your permission. Maybe you should talk to a lawyer. Someone who knows the law and can help you. Tom thought about it. He had never been in a fight like this before. He was a quiet man who liked peace and nature. But maybe it was time to be strong. The next day, Tom visited a small law office in town. He met Mr. Khan, a friendly lawyer with a warm smile. Tom explained everything, showing all the papers and letters. Mr. Khan nodded slowly. This is a serious issue, Tom. The HOA should not build on your property without your permission. You have clear proof. But the problem is that the HOA may try to fight back. You need to prepare carefully. Tom asked, what should I do first? Mr. Khan said, we can send them a formal notice, a letter that says you will take legal action if they don't remove the cabin. Sometimes, a strong letter can make them listen. Tom agreed. He wanted to keep things peaceful but also protect his land. Over the next week, Tom waited again. He hoped the HOA would change their mind and do the right thing. But he noticed more changes at the site. The cabin now had windows and a small porch. It looked almost finished. One evening, as the sun was setting, Tom sat on his porch at home, looking at the lake. The peaceful water reflected the orange sky. But his heart was heavy. He remembered the day he first bought the land. How happy he was to think of this place as his special retreat. Now, the cabin felt like a wall between him and the peace he longed for. Tom knew the road ahead would be difficult. He was ready to fight, but he wished it could be different. He wished the HOA had asked him, talked to him, and respected his rights. The next morning, a letter arrived. It was from the HOA. Tom opened it with hope. But the letter was cold and firm. The HOA refused to remove the cabin. They said the land was common property and that Tom was wrong. They warned him to stop interfering with the construction. Tom felt a wave of sadness. It was clear they did not want to listen. He showed the letter to Mr. Khan. The lawyer said, now, we must prepare for the next step. If they refuse to respect your rights, we may have to go to court. Tom took a deep breath. His peaceful dream was turning into a battle. But he was not ready to give up. He loved this land too much. For now, he would watch the cabin every day. He would keep gathering proof and support. And when the time came, he would stand strong to protect what was his. Days turned into weeks, but the cabin still stood firm on Tom's land. It was no longer just a small structure under construction, it was a finished cabin with walls, windows, and a tiny porch. Tom passed by it every day on his way to the lake, and each time his heart felt heavier. The peace he had hoped to find was slipping further away. Despite the legal letters and his quiet protests, the HOA acted as if nothing was wrong. They continued to use the cabin for community events and invited people to visit. Tom saw strangers walking near his trees, laughing and taking photos. They didn't know the land belonged to Tom. To them, it was just a friendly little cabin by the lake. Tom wanted to explain, to tell them the truth. But he knew it wouldn't help. The HOA had grown stronger, and Tom was just one man. The law might be on his side, but the fight felt lonely and quiet, a slow, silent threat to everything he loved. One evening, Tom sat by the lake, watching the sun disappear behind the hills. The water reflected the soft colors of the sky, but Tom could barely see it. His mind was full of worry and confusion. What should I do? He whispered to himself. How can I protect my land if no one listens? His phone rang suddenly, breaking his thoughts. It was Lisa, his friend from the town. "Hi, Tom. I just heard some news," Lisa said quickly. "People in town are talking about the cabin. Some say the HOA is in the wrong. They want to support you." Tom felt a small spark of hope. "Really? That's good." "Yes," Lisa said. "Maybe you should try to talk to more neighbors. If they know your story, they might help." Tom smiled faintly. He hadn't thought of that before. He had been focused only on the legal side and the HOA's decisions, but the community's voice could be powerful. The next day, Tom began visiting his neighbors one by one. He told them his story carefully, showing the survey and the letters. Some people listened quietly. Others looked surprised. A few said they were too afraid to get involved. But slowly, Tom found a few supporters, people who understood how unfair the situation was. They promised to stand with him if he needed help. Feeling stronger, Tom decided to send a letter to the HOA again. This time, he wrote not only about the legal papers but also about the community's concern. He asked them one last time to respect his rights and remove the cabin. He waited for a response. Days later, a letter came back from the HOA board. It was cold and firm. The HOA refused to remove the cabin and accused Tom of disturbing the peace. They said the cabin was for the good of the community and that Tom was selfish for trying to stop it. Tom's heart sank. The letter made it clear the HOA was not interested in solving the problem peacefully. They were ready for a fight. He showed the letter to Mr. Khan, his lawyer. "This is serious," Mr. Khan said. "They are challenging you openly. Now, it is time to prepare for court. We will need to gather all your evidence, including the survey, letters, and the support from neighbors." Tom felt a wave of fear but also determination. He was no longer just protecting land, he was defending his dream, his peace, and his right to be heard. Meanwhile, the cabin remained, a silent symbol of the battle that was growing between Tom and the HOA. It was not just wood and nails, it was a wall between Tom and the life he wanted. At night, Tom sometimes heard voices near the cabin, neighbors laughing, children playing. The sound should have been comforting, but for Tom, it felt like noise invading his quiet world. One night, Tom woke up with a start. He had a bad dream where the lake disappeared, and all the trees around his land were gone. In the dream, he was alone and lost. When he opened his eyes, he realized the fight with the HOA was not just about land, it was about protecting the peace he needed to live. The next morning, Tom walked to the cabin again. This time, he didn't feel anger or sadness. Instead, he felt a quiet strength growing inside him. He knew the road ahead was long and difficult. The HOA might be powerful, but Tom had something stronger: his courage and the truth. Tom made a plan. He would gather more neighbors, share his story with the local newspaper, and prepare for the court case with his lawyer. He wanted the world to know what was happening at Lakeview. As Tom looked over the water, he whispered to himself, "This land is mine. And I will not give up." Tom stood at the edge of his land, looking at the cabin one last time. The small building was almost finished now. Windows were in place, the roof was complete, and the porch looked inviting. It was strange to see something so familiar on his land, yet so wrong at the same time. The days had been long and difficult. The letters, the meetings, and the silent stares from some neighbors had worn him down. But Tom was not ready to give up. The cabin had to be removed. Tom remembered the advice from his lawyer, Mr. Khan. They had talked about waiting for the court date and trying to solve the problem peacefully. But every day, The cabin reminded Tom that waiting was not always the answer. Sometimes, he had to take control. One evening, Tom sat at his kitchen table, a cup of tea growing cold in his hands. The sun was setting, casting warm light through the window. He thought about what he wanted not just for himself, but for the future of the land he loved. He knew the law could take time, and the HOA was strong. But he also knew the land was his. The cabin was built without his consent, and that was not right. Tom made a decision. He would remove the cabin himself. Not in anger or revenge, but to protect what was his. The next morning, Tom woke early. He packed his tools, a hammer, a saw, and some nails, and headed to the cabin. He knew it would be hard work, but he felt calm inside. This was something he had to do. As Tom approached the cabin, he saw the familiar faces of a few neighbors standing nearby. They were watching quietly. Some nodded at him with support, others looked worried. Tom took a deep breath. "I'm going to start taking down the cabin today," he said softly. "I want to do this peacefully, but I can't wait any longer." The neighbors didn't say much, but their eyes showed they understood. It was not an easy decision for Tom, but it was the right one. Tom began his work carefully. He removed the window frames, one by one, and took apart the porch steps. Each piece he took down was a small victory, a step closer to reclaiming his land. As the hours passed, more neighbors came to watch. Some offered water and words of encouragement. Tom smiled, feeling a quiet strength grow inside him. He was not alone. But not everyone was happy. Late in the afternoon, a few members of the HOA board arrived. They watched Tom work, their faces serious. One man, Mr. Green, stepped forward. "Tom," Mr. Green said firmly, "you can't just destroy property like this. The cabin belongs to the community." Tom looked at him calmly. "It's built on my land, Mr. Green. Without my permission. I have tried to talk to you, but you ignored me." Mr. Green shook his head. "We will take this to court. You have no right to do this." Tom nodded. "I know. But I have to protect what's mine. I hope the court will see that too." The board members left, but Tom's heart did not feel fear. He felt peace. For the first time in weeks, he felt like he was standing up for himself. As the sun began to set, the cabin was only half there. Tom sat on a log nearby, watching the last light fade behind the trees. He thought about the future. The court case was coming, and the fight was far from over. But Tom knew he had done what he could for now. That night, Tom slept deeply. For the first time in a long time, he dreamed not of worry but of hope. He dreamed of the quiet lake, the tall trees, and a place where he could finally feel at home. The next morning, Tom received a call from Mr. Khan. The lawyer said the HOA had officially filed a lawsuit against him for removing the cabin. Tom listened quietly. He knew the legal battle was just beginning. But Tom was ready. He was no longer just a man with a piece of land. He was a man standing for what he believed was right. Tom looked out the window at the lake. The water was calm, shining under the morning sun. "This land is mine," he whispered. "And I will protect it, no matter what." Tom knew the lawsuit was serious. When he received the papers from the court, he felt a mix of fear and determination. The HOA had taken legal action against him for removing the cabin that they had built on his land. This was more than just a fight about property, it was a test of his courage. The court date was set for a few weeks later. Tom and Mr. Khan prepared carefully. They gathered all the evidence, the surveyor's report showing the cabin was on Tom's land, the letters Tom had sent to the HOA, and the replies they had ignored. They also collected statements from neighbors who supported Tom and agreed the cabin was wrongfully built. On the day of the hearing, Tom arrived early at the courthouse. The building was large and filled with people. Tom felt small inside, but he stood tall. This was his chance to be heard. The HOA board members were there too, with their own lawyers. They looked confident. Mr. Green, the HOA leader, stared at Tom without saying a word. The judge entered the room and asked everyone to rise. When the judge sat, the room grew quiet. Mr. Khan spoke first. He explained Tom's side calmly and clearly. He showed the maps, the survey, and the letters. He told the judge how the HOA had built the cabin without Tom's permission on his private land. Then, the HOA lawyers spoke. They claimed the cabin was on common land owned by the HOA. They argued that Tom was trying to take away a shared resource from the community. Tom listened quietly. He felt the weight of the moment. But he knew the truth was on his side. The judge asked questions to both sides, looking closely at the documents. Tom answered honestly and respectfully. After the hearing, the judge said she would take some time to study the case before making a decision. Tom left the courthouse feeling tired but hopeful. He knew the battle was not over, but he had taken a strong step forward. Back at home, Tom's phone rang. It was Lisa. "How did it go?" she asked. Tom smiled. "It was hard, but I think we made a good case." "That's great. You're so brave, Tom." Tom felt grateful for her support. It made him stronger. The days passed slowly. Tom continued to care for his land, visiting the lake and keeping an eye on the cabin. Although part of it was torn down, the HOA had tried to repair some sections, hoping to keep it. Tom was ready for anything. One afternoon, a group of neighbors came to visit him. They brought homemade cookies and stories of their own fights for fairness in the town. They told Tom they believed in him and wanted to help. Tom felt warmth inside. He was not alone anymore. Together, they started a small community meeting. They talked about land rights, fairness, and respect. The group grew, and soon, more neighbors joined. The HOA noticed the change. Their power was not as strong as before. But the real test was still to come: the judge's decision. Weeks later, Tom received a letter from the court. His hands shook as he opened it. The judge had made her ruling. She said the cabin was built on Tom's property without permission. The HOA had no right to build there. The judge ordered the HOA to remove the cabin and to stop all construction on Tom's land immediately. Tom felt tears in his eyes. The fight was far from easy, but justice had been done. The HOA sent another letter, this time promising to respect the court's decision. Tom knew they might try to return later, but for now, the victory was his. That night, Tom sat by the lake, watching the stars appear one by one. The water was calm and clear. His land was safe for now. He whispered softly, "This is my home. My peace." And for the first time in a long time, Tom felt truly free. After the court's decision, Tom felt like a heavy weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The victory was not just about the land, it was about justice, respect, and standing up for what was right. For the first time in many months, Tom could breathe deeply and feel hope. The HOA sent workers to start removing the cabin. Slowly, the wooden structure came down, plank by plank. Tom watched from a distance. It was strange to see the cabin disappear, but he knew it was the right thing. Neighbors who had supported Tom came by to help clean the land. Together, they cleared the area, planting flowers and small trees. The community was coming together in a way Tom had never imagined. One morning, as Tom walked along the lake, Lisa joined him. She smiled warmly. "You did something amazing, Tom. Not many people would fight so hard for their rights," she said. Tom smiled back. "I had to. This place means a lot to me. It's not just land, it's my home." Lisa nodded. "I know. And I'm proud of you." For a while, life felt calm. Tom spent his days enjoying the quiet lake and the fresh air. He built a small wooden bench by the shore where he could sit and think. The peaceful moments made him stronger. But the fight had left its marks. Tom felt tired sometimes, and the tension with some members of the HOA still lingered. Not everyone was happy with the court's decision. A few neighbors avoided him, and rumors spread about the disagreement. One afternoon, Tom received a letter from the HOA. This time, it was different. The letter apologized for the confusion and said they wanted to meet to find a better way to live together in the community. Tom was surprised but hopeful. Maybe this was a chance to heal old wounds. He agreed to meet with the HOA board at the town hall. The meeting was quiet at first. Mr. Green, the HOA leader, spoke carefully. "We understand the court's decision, Tom. We want to move forward in a way that respects your rights and the community's needs." Tom listened. He felt cautious but willing. "I want to protect my land and my peace," Tom said honestly. "But I also want to live in a community where people respect each other." The conversation continued for hours. They talked about rules, boundaries, and how to communicate better. Slowly, trust began to grow. The HOA agreed to work with Tom on a plan to protect the land around the lake, making sure no one built without permission. Tom promised to share his concerns openly. After the meeting, Tom felt a quiet hope. Maybe the fight was over, and a new chapter could begin. That night, Tom sat by the lake, the stars shining above. He thought about the journey he had traveled from frustration and fear to courage and hope. The land was still his. But now, he also had a community that was learning to listen. Tom smiled softly and whispered, "This is just the beginning." Months passed since the court decision and the meeting with the HOA. Tom's life had changed in many ways, but the biggest change was the peace he finally felt. The cabin was gone, and the land was safe once more. But even more important was the new respect between Tom and his neighbors. Tom had spent the spring planting wildflowers along the edge of his property. The colors brightened the land and made the lake feel more alive. Sometimes, children from nearby houses would stop by to watch the butterflies and bees. Tom smiled when he saw their happy faces. It reminded him why he loved this place so much. One sunny afternoon, Tom was sitting on his wooden bench by the lake when Lisa came to visit. She brought a picnic basket and a blanket. "Thought we could enjoy the day," Lisa said with a bright smile. Tom laughed softly. "That sounds perfect." They spread the blanket under a tall oak tree. The lake shimmered in the sunlight, birds sang, and a gentle breeze cooled the warm air. For a moment, everything was just right. As they ate, Tom shared his hopes for the future. "I want to build a small cabin here someday," he said quietly. "A place just for me, a little shelter where I can come to think and relax." Lisa's eyes sparkled. "That sounds wonderful, Tom. And now, with the HOA working with you, it's possible." Tom nodded. "Yes. We've agreed to create clear boundaries and rules. No one will build without permission, and the land will stay peaceful. Lisa smiled warmly. You fought hard for this, Tom. You deserve the peace. Tom looked out over the lake. He felt a deep calm inside. The long fight was over, and something new was beginning. Weeks later, Tom invited his neighbors to a small gathering by the lake. It was a celebration of the new understanding they had built together. People brought food, music, and stories. There was laughter and warmth in the air. Even Mr. Green, the HOA leader, came. He shook Tom's hand firmly. We've learned a lot, Mr. Green said. And we're sorry for the trouble we caused. Let's work together from now on. Tom smiled. That's all I ever wanted. The night ended with the neighbors watching the stars and the gentle waves of the lake. Tom felt a strong connection not just to the land, but to the people who lived nearby. The fight over the cabin had been hard, but it had taught everyone something important about respect and fairness. Tom realized that peace was more than just quiet, it was about trust and understanding. As the seasons changed, Tom began to build his small cabin, carefully and with permission from the HOA. It was a simple place, made with love and respect for the land. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Tom sat on his porch, listening to the sounds of nature. The lake was calm, the air was fresh, and his heart was full. He whispered softly to himself, "This is my home. This is my peace. And I will protect it, always." Tom closed his eyes and smiled. The lake, the land, and the people around him were finally at peace.